Hello, hello. That was a lovely little intro by Jesse. All right, so I'm going to be here to introduce John Mack. He has been called a visionary, a sage for humanity in the age of tech. He was an honoree of the Explorers Club, 50 people changing the world who the world needs to know about. He is an author, an artist, and founder of the nonprofit Life Calling, whose mission is to preserve our humanity in the digital age. Over the past decade, John has brought to the forefront deeper issues of our humanity in light of our increasing dependence on smart devices and rising AI. He is a frequent speaker at conferences and leading universities on the subject of technology, awareness, and consciousness. Among other affiliations, Mack serves as a board member of Fair Play, an organization that strives to create a world where kids can be kids, free from the false promises of marketers and the manipulations of big tech. He is a member of Forward Global, The Conduit, Nexus Global, and the strategic advisor to the Be Kind Tech Fund by Globant Ventures. When we discovered John's work and Life Calling's bold mission to preserve our humanity in the digital age, we knew we needed to bring them into the MozFest community. John's higher awareness of the human-machine landscape reveals a new era of need and the call for a new era of philanthropy. The H+1 humanity impact model ensures that humanity always takes precedence over tech. We kick off today's funder track, Breaking the Mold, as we love to do at MozFest, if you've been to a couple. We kick off of traditional presentations and fireside chats and invite each of you in this room and joining online into a journey of introspection with a call to imagine the possibilities within our reach, to flip the paradigm on how we respond to today. Oh, you know what? How I respond to today's connection crisis. Here to talk about AI and the unconscious migration, investing in the inner, John Mack.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? So very excited to be here. I will say, I know this is being live streamed, so people at home or playing hooky in your office, grab, if you can, a pen and a piece of paper. We all have that here in the audience, so if you can at home, do that, because we'll be using it later. For those of you who don't know, these are the new Apple Vision Pro goggles. I will take these off at some point, but I'm wearing these for 3 reasons. The first reason is to tell you that I own these. These are mine. And what I want to say about that is I am very, very, very pro-tech. I love technology. I was extremely excited to get my hands on these. But I want to be very clear. I am pro-human first. Number two, I'm wearing these because I want to show how close technology is now encroaching on our bodies. So you think of the television that sort of set the scene for the living room. It was a certain distance. And then you have the computer, the desktop computer, which is on your table. Then you have a laptop, which is on your lap. Then you have the iPhone in your pocket. Then you have the wearables. Now you have this on your face. So if you can just follow the proximity and how close tech is getting, we are here now. This will soon go into the neocortex of the brain. And we're working on that now, okay? So I want you to see that chronology and where we are in history. Third reason I'm wearing these is because I've got volumes on this, but I don't want to get into it today. What I do want to say is this. Technology is often the outer manifestation of our inner psychology. So there's a digital mirror in front of us, and I'm always asking, are we properly self-reflecting in the digital mirror? So I'm not sure if you know how this works, but I'm actually blindfolded right now, but I see all of you. It's because these have cameras pointing outward toward you, and then it's projecting the image inside these goggles. And what better analogy for human ignorance than walking the world blindfolded? Technology is mimicking that right now. So we need to reflect in this digital mirror. I will take these off now.
How does it compare?
How does it compare? It's a great question. I wasn't aware. I knew that we were trying to mimic reality as best we could with 3D graphics. I didn't know Apple would take this step. I've got another volume on this, which I can't get into, but I will say this. Apple has digitized space reality, which is quite a concept. Okay, so into this. Any more questions? Okay, get into this now. Move to the side here. Do we know what Pokemon Go is? I'll just get into it real quickly for those who don't know. It's a gaming app launched by Niantic, and it is a location-based augmented reality game where you go around the world chasing digital creatures called Pokemon, which are actually displayed on your phone. And this came out in 2016, and in 2016, I was reading a Yahoo News article on something called a Pokemon Go Stampede. And I didn't know what that was, so I hopped onto YouTube, and this is what it showed me. These are the streets of Taipei back in 2016, a Pokemon Go Stampede. These are thousands of people chasing a Pokemon. Okay, that's one of many. That was just one of the first ones in 2016. So I had a conversation with this man. This is historian Yuval Noah Harari, wrote the book *Sapiens*. He and I have an hour-long conversation about this topic, but I just want to show you just a clip of it. Back in 2016, I read an article about something called a Pokemon Go Stampede. Are you familiar with the game Pokemon Go?
Yes, very much.
I didn't know what that even looked like, so I went to YouTube, and it took me to the streets of Taipei.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an intersection where traffic had come to a complete standstill as thousands of people were running to chase a Pokemon, a rare Pokemon. It was intelligent life putting their immediate reality on hold to chase a figment of their device's imagination.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, if you envision this sort of what it looked like was a mass migration of humanity leaving something and going towards something else, the virtual construct.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have any idea, or maybe we could even get into it together, what is it that we're running away from? You can watch the rest of that on YouTube. I knew the answer to that question, and we're going to get into it today, but I wanted to put Yuval on the spot, and it was a great conversation, about an hour long. So, what am I to present today? I call this the unconscious migration of humanity, and as Jessie said in her introduction, making the invisible visible. We need to make this unconscious migration brought into consciousness so that we can see our options. And the options will let us know how do we advance into the future without dropping our humanity by the wayside. So there is a reason why there's this natural landscape in that image. In the same way that climatologists are saying that we're reaching a tipping point, that when crossed, we will never again be able to go back to the natural essence of the planet. The same is true for the human. Our inner environment is at stake. The human is reaching a tipping point that when crossed, we will never again be able to go back to what it means to be human. And this is very much due to technology. And in the same way that the climate crisis has called on us to self-reflect on how we got here and how to move forward. The same is true with this inner climate crisis. And it is my job at Life Calling to make sure we answer, first of all, that we hear this call, and second of all, that we answer the call. And that's what we're going to do today. So, breaking it down into these chapters. Beyond the talk, I will be deepening our awareness on the human-machine landscape. One thing that I find very often in this AI talk and in many other things in the world is that some of us are so stuck inside the jelly jar we can't see the label. What that means is there are people out there who are extremely well-intentioned, who are putting a lot of money and effort into fixing a problem, but they lack the awareness of the totality of the issue. And until you understand and have the awareness of the totality of the issue, you will not find a bona fide solution. In fact, all you can do are provide Band-Aids. And beyond that, the risk is that some of your great solutions to fixing the problem actually feed the problem. So awareness is extremely important, and we'll go into that today. Then we'll talk about the problem, a problem which I call the parasite and the host. I'll talk about the short-term fixes, which is where I see a lot of impact and philanthropy these days and why it needs to change. I'll talk about the cure. And then once you see the cure to any problem, that problem then becomes an opportunity. And I will say right now, be very clear, the real opportunity in AI will not come from AI. It's coming from the prompt that AI is giving to humanity to finally step up to the plate and realize something we have yet to realize. Beyond the talk. So higher awareness here. Not sure who caught this cover when it came out. The End of Humanity, How Real is the Threat? So if I'm claiming our humanity is on the line, what does our humanity mean? What does it mean to be human? It's a big question, but without sort of filling your mouths with a bunch of words, I think we can all agree that our humanity most shines when we listen, when we have community, when we create, where there is love, where there's compassion, and where there's empathy. Now, all those characteristics of what it means to be human, the interesting thing about them is they actually come from the same source. They blossom from a source. I would like to share with you now this place that all those characteristics come from. Did you see it? Speaking about making the invisible visible, did you see it? So I have an exercise here that's going to explain this a little bit. On your chairs and people at home or in the office, if you could grab that piece of paper that you have and something to write with. I'm going to give you 30 seconds or more if you need it. I'd like you to draw a rectangle with only 3 lines in it. I'll give you time. I knew you'd do that, Jesse. How we doing? Okay. If you use the side of the page, it doesn't count. Okay? All right. So here's a rectangle with only 3 lines in it.
Oh my God.
Duh, right? But that's what I asked you to do. Why didn't you do it? It's so easy. The problem is that we have a thought pattern going on in the background of our mind that is eclipsing the obvious. And so could it be that when we were quiet there in that space, if we didn't see it, it's because we had something going on in the back of our minds that was obscuring something so obvious and so unbelievably beautiful. I'm going to sort of stand over here now. This gets very presentation heavy. Essence, that's the space that we were all in there, which we're actually in right now as well. And I'm using this human form, this big figure, to symbolize essence. So in the essence dimension springs inspiration, creativity, community, and I changed that also to community, nurturing, it is active, it is wholeness. Now we bring on these thought patterns of the mind. And these thought patterns, when we're attached to them, they actually eclipse that other dimension. Thought patterns eclipse the essence dimension. They are rational, pragmatic, binary, analytical, systematic, and they are data-bound. This bottom, and don't think hierarchy of better, worse, top, bottom. The real drawing of this is a bit more complex. I've cheated to make it fit on the screen here. This bottom dimension is the dimension of rationality. When we are attached to rationality, this top dimension is deemed irrationality. Okay? Mechanical on the bottom, the natural on the top, intellect on the bottom here, intelligence in the top. Carl Jung would call this here the logos, or the masculine toned, on the bottom here. The top being eros, the feminine toned. Now, next exercise. Grab that piece of paper, maybe the other side. I'd like you, in 5 sentences or less, people at home as well, describe the color blue. And if you forget what blue looks like, you can just look at that. How are we doing? Some people finished? Would anyone like to share what they wrote about the color blue? Great, thank you.
Cold, expansive, vast, calm. Rest.
Cold, expansive, vast, calm.
Rest.
Rest.
Yeah.
Okay. If I never knew what blue was, would that help me know blue? No, not at all. Has anyone described blue? Because that doesn't describe blue.
Well, I sort of describe it by other things.
By other things, such as?
Blue is the color of the sky or the ocean.
Color of the sky or the ocean. Great. So you've described the sky and the ocean, not blue, right? Has anyone described blue? Let's hear what you have.
Blue is a cool color.
Cool color.
Composed of high-frequency light.
High-frequency light.
It is calming to human perception.
Calming.
Of water and clear sky.
Water, clear sky.
It ranges from deep to light.
Ranges from deep to light. Good. Yeah, still. That was good. Yeah, very specific. Still wondering what blue is? I did the same thing. Blue is a color that gives feelings of clarity and purity. It can be found to describe a mood, as in feeling down or depressed. The color of the ocean and the sky, one of three primary colors. I didn't describe what blue is. Actually, everything that we've said has missed blue. We've actually eclipsed blue. We've made it harder to know. So in that first part of this talk, when we were speaking of the space, right, that we didn't see, the first limitation of thought is when you have a program running in the back of the mind, you will not see an essence. The second limitation of thought is even when you do see an essence, blueness, thought can't describe it. It can only talk around it. What we're seeing is limitation of thought patterning. Okay. I asked ChatGPT the same thing to describe in 5 sentences the color blue. I'll read it to you because this is, blue is a primary color associated with the sky and the ocean, wavelength between 450, 490 nanometers, soothing effect, great color for clothing, and there's baby blue, navy blue, sky blue. Eclipse is blue. It cannot describe blue. So technology, there's a reason why technology answered it in the same way that we answered it. And that is because technology is born out of this dimension. It's born out of thought and data and binary thinking and the analytical. Now, you might say, yes, but with AI now, it's going to grow and it's going to learn. Yes, but it's growing off data. It's bound to the data dimension. And so you say, wow, look at these capabilities. AI is going to get huge and totally surpass us. Yes, maybe, but do you see that it's still within the lower dimension? It hasn't surpassed it. And this is an extremely important point that I want to land today. This is very, very important. The limitations of AI are limitless. And this is where, for you who know transhumanism, the whole sort of philosophy is transhumanism, this is where they get it wrong. Because when you're attached to thought patterning, you think that merging with the machine is the next step in our evolution. This is the merging of the machine. And I'm here to say the next step in our evolution is not a merging with the machine, but rather a merging with our deeper essence. And it's important that we get this right before we all turn into machines. I'll say another thing about transhumanism. You can't be transhuman until you've been human first. And I can guarantee you, when you land on human, you won't even entertain transhumanism. The biggest threat to humanity is not AI, but is and always has been the limited perception of our very selves. So, we still haven't even gotten into the problem yet. This is still just the landscape overview. We've got 3 players here on this screen. Okay, I'll get into them. We have the self, the totality of the self. We have this down here, which is the separate self, total attachment to thought patterns, which separates from the totality of essence. This separation is a psychological undertaking. Just store that in your head for now. We'll get back to that a little bit later. Psychological undertaking. And then we've got technology made in the separate self's image. Okay. To understand this separate self and where we're going, we have to understand the behavioral patterns of the separate self. If in the essence dimension flourishes inspiration, if we are separated from inspiration, we are running patterns of repetition. When we're separated from creativity, we run patterns of imitation. When we're separated from community, we run patterns that are individualistic. When we separate from nurturing, we are abusive. When we separate from the active, we are reactive. When we separate from wholeness, we take sides. We separate inside and we take sides. And if you look at all of these words here in behavioral patterns, I guarantee you, no matter where you go in the world, whether it is international war or domestic violence in the house, the separate self is alive and thriving there. So this talk is not just about technology. This is much deeper. Those are the behavioral patterns. Now we'll get into the emotional patterns of the separate self. If we're separated from inspiration, we run an emotional pattern of dullness. When we separate from creativity, we have a pattern of boredom. When we separate from community, our emotional pattern is loneliness. When we separate from nurturing, our emotional pattern is one of abandonment, feelings of abandonment. When we separate from the active, our emotional pattern is one of passivity. When we separate from wholeness, we run an emotional pattern of emptiness. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Now we're going to get into the problem, the parasite and the host. And we need to understand the separate self in order to understand the problem. Okay. So I'm going to get black and white, very schematic here. I'm calling the separate self the host. I'm calling technology parasite. I'm not saying that technology is a parasite. I'm saying the relationship that we have established with it makes it parasitic. Okay? Nothing wrong with technology. Remember, I own those Vision Pros, and I love them. The question is, do I use the Vision Pros, or do the Vision Pros use me? Okay. So how does this work here to understand how this parasite-host relationship works? In order to understand this, we need to understand the exploitive patterns of technology. If I'm running an emotional pattern of dullness, technology comes to the rescue with distraction. If I'm running a pattern of boredom, technology steps in with novelty. If I'm having an emotional pattern of loneliness, technology comes in with virtual connection. If I'm running a pattern of abandonment, feelings of abandonment, technology comes to the rescue with virtual validation. An emotional pattern of passivity, in comes technology with entertainment. If I'm feeling empty inside, tech comes in with a feeling of virtual fulfillment. And so what that happens is it baits us and moves us closer to technology. Now, this is extremely important here. This is not just a separation from self now. This is a dislodging from the self. It is a dislocation. Where the first separation was a psychological undertaking, this is purely a technological undertaking. And this is something we have yet to experience, as far as I know, on this planet in recorded human history. That's what makes this so essential. The risk is we become so dislocated from self that we can never go back to that essence. another thing to watch. If the exploitive patterns of tech is distraction, look at how distraction is a substitute. It's a direct substitute of inspiration. Novelty, direct substitute of creativity. Virtual connection, direct substitute of community. Virtual validation, direct substitute of the nurturing. Entertainment, substitute for the active. Virtual fulfillment, direct substitute for wholeness. So what happens? We're baited again. Rather than going up vertically into the totality of ourselves, we get pulled out again and dislocated even more. Here are just a few more things, and I don't mean to pick on Apple here. I've got volumes on Apple. I wish I could talk about Apple, but it would take 2 days. But these are Apple operating systems. So this is Catalina, Sierra, El Capitan, Mavericks, Mountain Lion, Snow Leopard. These are just a few. What is it that they all have in common? The natural is up here. The mechanical is down here. We're actually giving the mechanical a false natural appearance. What does that do? Baits us even more, and we get even more dislocated. Artificial intelligence. What a name. I think in the panel yesterday in the morning, I think the question was asked if there was one thing you could sort of demystify about artificial intelligence and all the hype around it, what would it be? One thing I would like to get rid of is the idea that it's intelligence of any kind. Artificial intelligence does not exist. What we have is artificial intellect. Intelligence is a totally different thing. Intelligence is of the upper dimension. Tech cannot touch that dimension. I've got a whole rant about a lot of the nomenclature right now being assigned to digital tech. It's a very slippery slope how we're naming things, and it's pulling us and baiting us even closer to tech, further dislocating ourselves. But I can't get into that today. So what I will say is this. Intelligence is of the top dimension. We are actually given intellect a false intelligence appearance. What does that do? Baits us even more, further dislocation. These are androids that appear every now and then in the news. This is Sophia, another name for wisdom, clever. Siri, the voice of a woman when it first came out. This is Maria Cyborg from the movie Metropolis, right? Woman. Grace, there's another great name for a woman. Grace, a descending energy from above. They call a robot android Grace. Eros, the feminine toned, is in this top dimension. We're giving the masculine toned a feminine disguise. This truly is, what's playing out is the woman made in the man's image that's carrying out in tech. And what that's doing is dislodging us even more. Okay. Now, if we look at the words here to your left, what I want you to do is I want you to equate Eros, the feminine toned, to all these words here. Inspiration, creativity, community. This is vitality itself. It is colorful. So female, color. Total detachment and attachment to thought patterning. The masculine toned, dullness, boredom. Think gray. No color. Okay, now I want to show you a television commercial that was released by Apple in 1984 at the Super Bowl in the United States. So just keep those relations in your mind with the color and the tones.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure focus on one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
So just something to think about. Okay. The short-term fix. I call the short-term fix, everything that I'm seeing right now with regard to this, I call it a repellent, and we'll see why. Okay, we have the host and the parasite. And what we're seeing today is money and effort spent on better regulation. Very important. And you'll see this sort of oval down there. It's actually, what that does is it gives a buffer between this parasite and the host. It protects us. Money spent on device education, same thing, a buffer. Device responsibility, changing the business model, and more humane tech. And this is what this one's actually extremely important, this more humane tech thing. This is a repellent. It buys us time. It's extremely important, the repellent, but it's not the cure. It was said in my introduction that I sit on the board of, I've been on the board for 9 years of an organization called Fair Play, which protects kids from online harms. Fair Play actually just orchestrated, I think it was about 20 mothers who had lost their children to suicide from social media abuse. And they were down in Washington in front of Congress. And Mark Zuckerberg was actually there to listen to their stories. And Mark actually apologized to them. You can see it on the internet. So Fair Play is a repellent, and it's extremely important, which is why I'm involved in it. But I want a cure. The problem with repellents is that repellents are reactionary. And with the speed of progress right now, the repellent is going to show up later and later to the game. We need a cure. One thing about this more humane tech thing that concerns me is that we're mistaking more humane tech with more human tech. Okay? So let me show you what that looks like. So teaching AI to make people happy. Teaching AI empathy. Loving AI, kind of creepy. So here's the problem with this. Compassion, empathy, and love, those are in the environment of the human soul. To program tech with compassion, empathy, and love is, at a very high level, to program it with an artificial soul. And what we're really looking for deep down is a coming into our full essence of soul. What we're actually saying here is, you know what? I'll let tech do it for me. And so this is the straw that breaks the camel's back and dislocates us so much that we merge into the cyborg. This is where we're going. Okay, the cure. Please. So, Life Calling, my nonprofit, we have launched something called H+1. It's an impact model in movement. I'll explain how it works. So H stands for humanity, and +1 stands for +$1. And here's how it works. Actually, it sort of began, I was in California with a friend of mine who was very excited about the work I was doing. And he said he was going to give large sum of money, perhaps $10 million, to teach AI compassion and empathy. And I said, wow, that's really, really great. Can we take at least half of that and teach humanity compassion and empathy? And duh, right? Obvious. Thought patterning, 2 inside the jelly jar, you can't see the label, right? Okay. He said, wow, that's a great idea. Okay. So this is, at a very high level, it doesn't work this way, but at a very high level, it's pretty much saying, whatever we give to tech for good and to progress, we need to match that into humanity for good plus at least $1. It shows we can be pro-tech, but we're going to be pro-human first. What is an H? I'll read this to you because it's in small type. As a symbol for humanity, an H is a specific organization selected into Life Calling's H+1 portfolio and cohort of transformative leaders that is answering the call of today's connection crisis by nurturing at least one of 4 lines of connection to the human soul. Connection to self through the cultivation of self-awareness, connection to others by nurturing relationships, connection with nature by fostering awe and wonder, connection to imagination by igniting creativity. H+1 framework, here's sort of how it looks and why we do it this way. Okay, 4 lines of connection. When we connect to others, we take care of community. When we connect to nature, we take care of nature over here. When we connect to our imagination, inspiration, creativity, when we are self-aware and take care of self-love, we are wholeness itself. When all of these are active and connected to, we are nurturing, we are active, we are intelligent, and what was once deemed irrationality is actually sanity. When we take care of all of these up here, we come into the fullness of ourselves. Here, we use technology. Technology does not use us. This is the restoration of human agency and freedom. And talk about democracy all you want. If you are not here, there's no such thing as democracy. Democracy first is an inner place. I'm from the United States. Freedom of speech, freedom to have a gun. That is not freedom. Freedom is not granted to you. With freedom comes responsibility. So we have people who are not free using freedoms as a conduit to express their non-freedoms. Hate speech through freedom of speech is a perfect example. You don't have to scan this here, but you have cards actually on your chairs. We're still building this portfolio of H organizations. If you scan that after this talk or later on today, if you could just provide an H organization that you might think good for this portfolio, and we will vet it and take a closer look at it. What we're doing is we're taking the binary equation and adding humanity back into the picture. The opportunity, rising to the occasion. Time, the end of humanity, how real is the threat? Well, instead of just seeing this news announcement, Kamala Harris set to unveil $200 million AI investment from private foundations, wouldn't it be wonderful to see a headline like this? Philanthropy unites on $200 million humanity fund to hedge for AI future. Thank you. Thank you. Time, the end of humanity. How real is the threat? I've got one more activity that I'd like to do before I close. If everybody could just pair with one person next to you to make it easy. If there's anyone who's alone and can't pair with someone, you can join me on stage and I'll do it with you. So find a partner. And for those of you at home or at the office, if you're sitting with anyone watching this, you can do it there as well. Okay. Is there anyone who doesn't have a partner? Because you can come up here. Everyone's good. Okay, this is what we're going to do. All right, we're going to do this together. We're going to turn our chairs towards each other. Okay. Take a seat. Okay, this is what we're going to do. In quiet, we are going to take 60 seconds and just look at the person who you've paired with in the eyes for a full 60 seconds in total silence. I'll tell you when the 60 seconds is over. And then when we're done, we're each going to state our names as our names appear on our birth certificates. If you've changed your name along the way, I prefer you to say your name on your birth certificate, but if you're uncomfortable doing that, say it how you want to. 60 seconds, are we ready? John Christopher Mack. Thanks. Okay. Okay. So, we ready to move on? Almost finished? Time, the end of humanity. How real is the threat? I'm arguing. Time, the beginning of compassion. How real is the opportunity? The beginning of empathy. The beginning of love. We still have the choice. We can make this digital age the age of our humanity. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for that, John. What an inspiring way to start our time together, right? Love to invite up our panel. So I'd love to start by having each of you introduce yourselves and the work that you're doing and sort of what sticks with you the most about how you're fostering these conversations right now.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Morrissey. I'm the Managing Director of Life Calling and spearheading the H+1 initiative with John and our team, and are really just driven right now to put the human at the center of everything. And what that means to us is really lifting up those 4 lines of connection and curating a global portfolio of existing organizations, like our friends here, who you'll hear from in a moment at 100% Human at Work. And really, there are existing NGOs and initiatives globally that already embody the essence of what John was speaking to. And in this digital age, we really view those organizations as the cure. And so we are bringing them together not only in a portfolio, but a cohort and community that we are going to invest in and bring along for a 4-year proof of concept journey with wraparound programming and activations that are centered around not a return on investment, an ROI, but an ROH, a return on humanity.
Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everyone. I'm Sheetal Vyas. I'm the Managing Director of Virgin Unite, which is the entrepreneurial foundation of the Virgin Group. We've been around for 20 years. In fact, this year is our 20th year. And our approach is incredibly entrepreneurial. We incubate initiatives. We never do that alone. We always collaborate with others. We always work across silos. We are geography agnostic, and we're also sector agnostic, which means we can play this role as a convener, bringing together, across divides in many ways, speaking the multiple languages of the various kind of sectors, whether that's corporates, NGOs, academia, bringing people together, creating trust, actually, because a lot of the divides that exist are around, different kind of factions not trusting each other, bringing that together to solve problems. And we have incubated 20 initiatives, campaigns over the last 20 years, one of which is an initiative called 100% Human, which Anna is going to introduce.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anna Gowdridge. I sit on the leadership team of Virgin Unite with Sheetal, but specifically head up 100% Human at Work initiative. And what we're looking at is the future of work and the impacts of AI and technology. And I actually don't particularly like the phrase the future of work because a lot of the changes are now. But as we think about the impacts of technology and AI, how do we put the human being at the heart of that challenge? And what is the future we want for human beings? And how do we, therefore, bring people together to collaborate to achieve that? And a big part of what we do is, therefore, pushing business to be part of the solution and not having that race to the bottom, and looking... The word we hear, and we talked about this quite a lot yesterday, is replacement, like replacing humans. Why would we be striving for a world in which we can replace ourselves? It seems like a slightly crazy aim. And so actually, how do you start with the idea of what is the world going to look like for humanity and for human beings, and then how do we make that our aim, and bring businesses and unlikely voices and unlikely partners together to try and achieve that?
Yeah, Catherine, I'm so struck by how in John's presentation and all the work that you all are doing on stage, you're really trying to put humanity and people first in these conversations. I'd love to know how at Life Calling that is actually translated into practice.
Yes, we have a tremendous amount of momentum right now. We know that this cannot be an initiative that is another donor collaborative fund. I think everyone in this room can agree that we have to reimagine and repackage philanthropy now. And there is tremendous urgency in that. And with that, we have to break through molds and paradigms of the tools and the frameworks and systems we're working with. So H+1 is really breaking all of those molds and saying that we need to shake hands as leaders and look each other in the eye and drop our egos and drop our respective agendas and start to pool monetary resources, hearts and minds, to take some risks and to break through glass ceilings together. And 100% Human at Work is one of those exemplary initiatives that is out there already, working with 500 C-level executives around the world, are all around authentic collaboration. I think we throw around a lot of buzzwords around we need radically bold collaboration and innovation. And we're using some of those words, but we mean it. And we are not going to partner with folks that do not mean it. And so for all of you in this room and all of you watching, this is an opportunity and a really deep invitation for you to join us. And so we've been very, very intentional over the past 7 months in designing this model and socializing it and building emerging partnerships like the one we have here.
If I could just add to that, step in. Can you hear me? Yeah. One of the things that we know needs to shift when it comes to philanthropy is this idea that everybody needs a theory of change and a quantitative metric in order to measure success. Part of what needs to change is the actual leap of faith that I'm talking about in the presentation, which is if you know in your heart that what someone is doing is right, go for it. Don't ask for the quantitative metric. Even if it fails. Even if it fails. Those are the times that we are in. That's part of the transition that needs to happen, because the quantitative metric is part of that rational thought process of evidence and science and data and all the rest of it. So part of that transition that I'm speaking about actually applies to giving.
And Sheetal, speaking of, measuring success, we were talking off stage about you all at Virgin Unite are having a kind of a pivotal moment, 20 years of doing this work. Little shout out for that.
Thank you. Yeah, and we're using it as a moment to look back, to reflect, to learn on what's worked, what hasn't worked. and engage. Like, just, you know, we saw it in the conversations yesterday. There are so many features to this kind of philanthropic space, you know, thinking about power, thinking about proximity. Are we really, really, truly understanding those within which we should be partnering with, as opposed to this kind of bubble that exists within philanthropy? So how can we get outside of this bubble? How can we engage? How can we truly meaningfully collaborate? How can we be bold in how we do that? How can we truly take risks? I completely agree around this point. You know, philanthropy should be risk capital, but yet we are looking for measures, we're looking for evidence, and that's kind of, you know, when you're starting an enterprise, whether that's in the private sector or in social impact, actually there's a you know, that kind of gut in terms of how we think we can tackle those problems. That's how we're going to, I think we need to ensure that we can kind of maintain that boldness that we've got. I also think there's a piece here around living our values as well. We talk such a good game in this space, but actually, are we really living those values? And so we're using that as a moment to see how we show up as an organisation before we can espouse to others, actually, are we living those values with respect to equity, with respect to the things that we talk about. So yeah, it's a moment to reflect, but also reinvigorate and think about what's the role that we can play to shape or to inform or to support social impact in the next 20 years, and getting outside of this kind of AI for good or whatever it might be, and actually thinking about where that impact is that we can make.
And thinking about AI, you know, we were talking about this getting a drink yesterday, this meme that I saw, maybe y'all have seen it, where it's someone saying, how did we get into this space where we're talking about AI writing movies and writing poetry? Why aren't we talking about, like, AI cleaning my bathroom so that I can write poetry and write movies and do all the stuff that makes life fun and exciting and full? And so I wonder, this idea of really thinking about people not as these resources to be extracted, but really having a more harmonious relationship between how we see humanity and technology. How has 100% human at work, like, how have you evolved? What's the origin story? And how are you sort of working within that dynamic?
Yeah, so my background's in the people space. So we worked, one of the initiatives we incubated that's now an initiative out in the world is the B team, looking at Plan B for business and how you reimagine business. And they were looking very much at environment and climate. They were looking very much at governance and taxation systems, and we felt very much that actually the people at the core of an organisation are one of the biggest impacts you have on the world. Human rights, the way people are treated, equity and inclusion, and just having the dignity of work and having that ability to contribute, to look after your family, to contribute to society, to contribute to community. And so for me, when you start talking about replacing jobs and replacing people, it makes me question, why do we want AI to do that? And where... because AI can do something, does it mean it should? And surely the purpose of developing these technologies is to enhance the human experience and enhance what we do. And so can we not step back and look at how we partner with technology, how it enables us to live more human lives rather than taking over things? And lovely conversation yesterday about kind of art and creativity and discovering your own weirdness and spending the space discovering your own weirdness. And I'm not convinced that AI can help you discover. I'm not sure AI spends a lot of time thinking about its own weirdness. And so let's just be very conscious as we charge towards it, we invest billions in developing these technologies, of what do we want it to do in the world and how do we mitigate unwanted harms. And again, we do that through working with business because they're job creators and those jobs give people a role in society. They also make them consumers of products, and people need to earn livings and all those various things. So we think there's a real role that business can play in stopping and thinking. And the cynic in me feels like today is the moment to do that, because business is trying to crack this problem. No one knows the answer. And so they're more willing than ever to engage in the conversation. So those of us who want to drive social impact should capitalise on that and get them in the room and push them in the right direction rather than the wrong one.
If I could just add to that, we can't forget that there's a creative experience in creating. And it goes back to some of the charts that I had there. Part of the addiction to the thought patterning is this attachment and addiction to efficiency. And so we're relying on these things to create for us because it's so efficient. But the greatest part about creation isn't the final product. It's the road of getting there and the self-discovery in getting there. To wipe that out and call just the product creation is, well, that's part of the problem. So can AI be creative? I would say no, because I call creation the process of creation, what we learn. Creation is about self-discovery. So let's not forget that.
That's a beautiful place to close. What a bold, urgent call to action. Catherine, I'll give you the last word.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, well, yeah. No pressure.
I would love everyone to reflect on what a return on your humanity looks like and is, and what a return on our humanity looks like and is.
And Catherine and I will actually be probably at the bar back there drinking. So if this resonates and you want to be a part of it, let's have a conversation. We're not here for show and tell, I guarantee it. So please come find us if you're interested.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.